The news which is coming out requires us to tread really carefully across the tense borders of war, diplomacy, and perception. And reports have emerged. They're on the BBC, they're on various other media outlets, they're across YouTube. They've emerged that Ukrainian forces have captured 2 Chinese nationals fighting in Donetsk on Ukrainian soil as part of Russia's military effort, it seems. And President Zelensky has confirmed their identity and suggested they're not alone. This, in his words, is a clear signal that Putin will do anything but end the war. But what does it mean strategically, legally, and symbolically if it's confirmed? There are 3 possibilities. One is that these are Chinese nationals who may be rogue actors, volunteers, individuals who volunteered or were recruited independently by Russia's vast network of foreign fighters in exchange for high pay, residence, or even Russian passports. We've seen similar cases with Cubans, Syrians, even Colombians. And if this is true, the embarrassment rests squarely on Beijing's soldiers for failing to prevent its citizens from joining a foreign conflict. It's diplomatically awkward, but it's not world-shaking. The second scenario is the unofficial official scenario, a more serious alternative, that these are not mercenaries but paramilitary proxies, possibly retired PLA personnel, ex-special forces or individuals operating under quiet Chinese state support. That would place Beijing in a dangerous liminal zone, a doorway zone, offering manpower while pretending neutrality. It would expose China to accusations of duplicity and direct involvement in an illegal war of aggression. The third possibility is the horrible possibility, the most explosive possibility, is that these are uniformed or sanctioned Chinese soldiers operating covertly on behalf of the state. And if this is proven, it would shatter China's long-maintained posture of non-alignment in the conflict and place Beijing in de facto military alliance with Russia on European soil, and the global reverberations would be seismic. Russia can recruit whomever it likes to fight within its own borders. Hence, when North Korean soldiers were captured in Kursk earlier this year, the legal ambiguity was less severe. But Donetsk is not legally Russian. It's occupied Ukrainian territory, recognized as such by the UN and all Western powers. Therefore, any Chinese nationals fighting there are engaged in an international crime, aiding an invading force on sovereign territory. And this places China, if involvement is proven, in breach of its commitments as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, a body allegedly devoted to international peace and law. And moreover, China's claim to neutrality evaporates in a puff of smoke if its citizens are shown to be actively participating in combat operations. Zelensky is entirely correct to demand a response, and he is right to demand one from the world, not just from Beijing. Now, why does this matter? Because it redraws the moral map of the war. Thus far, China has walked a fine line, rhetorically neutral, economically complicit. It has supplied semiconductors, drones and jet parts to Russia under the radar, while simultaneously presenting peace plans to the West. And that line becomes impossible to walk if Beijing's citizens are caught bearing arms in Donetsk. And the United States and its allies will have to decide, is China now an active co-belligerant? Should sanctions be extended accordingly? Should diplomatic relations be recalibrated and international opinion mobilized against a truly Axis-like alliance of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran? This has the potential to trigger a cascade of consequences, from additional sanctions to covert cyber operations, and one fears a situation in which Cold War rhetoric meets hot war personnel. Interestingly, Zelensky's rhetoric appears aimed less at China than at Washington. His call for a global response is in truth a plea to the United States. But the US, mired in its own internal divisions and a trade war of its own making with China, may prove reluctant to overact. Let's not forget, Western advisers have openly helped Ukraine. We do not pretend otherwise. We support a country defending itself against unprovoked aggression, but China cannot claim neutrality and engage in covert military support of an invader. Here lies the difference: transparency versus obfuscation. And the capture of 2 Chinese fighters in Donetsk is not just a military anecdote, it is potentially a diplomatic fault line. If they were mere mercenaries, it's a footnote. If they were the tip of a sanctioned spear, then Beijing has crossed the Rubicon, and the world, particularly Europe, must prepare for the implications. The dragon may not be breathing fire, but if it is seen marching beside the bear, the war in Ukraine may soon become a proxy war in name only. It will be a war between orders, between systems, and ultimately between truths. I think China has significantly more to offer than being the poodle to Putin. I think China has a role to play in peace, and China has a role to play in the development of our world, our global economy, our global advance. I have enormous faith in China. I have faith in Russia too, by the way, but not under Putin. And I am concerned. This is very worrying news.